I grew up in a tiny little town in Norway called Ski. And we got a lot of snow in the winter, and my dad was into grassroots rally, and we didn't have a lot of money, but the little bit of money we had, we got to spend on me going go-kart racing. So from the age of 12 through 15, I got to race go-karts across Scandinavia. We had one trip to Italy, and I was never really that fast, but I was always amazed by the guys that had the most control in the go-kart. So I had a friend that would only go out on rainy days. He would drift the entire track, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And a couple of years later, I came across a video online of a Japanese legendary drifter, Katsuhiro Ueo, who was ripping up a mountain toge in Japan. He was in a Toyota Corolla, an AE86, and I started learning more and more about the sport of drifting, how it came about as an offspring from traditional racing in Japan, and these rebels wanted to create a sport of their own. And I started saving up for my own drift car, ended up taking my scholarship for school, putting it into a really basic BMW I built with my friends. And 10 years after watching Ueo online, I was battling Ueo in the port of Long Beach, California. Yeah, it's been pretty wild. When you get to travel the world and compete everywhere, you know, in China and Japan and the States and doing some really cool things, you get kind of jaded. Sometimes you forget a little bit where you came from. So for me, it's really healthy as well as fun coming back to Gottlieb. This is where it started for me. I had no money. I had 4 wheels and tires in the back and a jack in the passenger seat. I drove on the streets to the track. I'm not a good mechanic, but I did what I could, and I had my friends help me, and they've saved me so many times. So the one thing that I learned when I was coming up through the ranks as a rookie drifter that didn't really know what I was doing was that in order to get noticed and in order to get track time, you got to do something different from the rest. So I had my really basic BMW, I went out on track and I started cutting all the corners. I went over the curb, jumping, I was spraying dirt everywhere. I was trying to catch up with the guys that were much better at drifting than I was. And at the end of a couple of events there, I got known for being a reckless madman, when in reality, I was never a madman. I was just trying to be smart about it. And that led to the flaggers wanting to see me on track. And now I got to bypass the line, I got to drift any session I wanted to, and I was kind of in the cool guys club of Gottlieb. The coolest thing about Gottlieb is that anything goes. You have guys that have been wrenching out of their garage for a year with their buddies showing up with a crazy 1,000 horsepower car that is, you know, barely keeping together. And they're out here on track mixing it up with professional race cars. And a lot of times the home-built car will be faster than the pro car. So that spirit of craftsmanship, that spirit of creating something of your own is very much alive at Gottlieb. And I think that's why it's so fascinating to the rest of the world. I love drifting because it's the art of trying to control a car that's out of control. But behind all of that is the sense of diving into the unknown. Drifting is still a young sport where there's no set recipe of what is the best car, or what is the best motor, what is the best tire. We're still all trying to shape the future of drifting. So to be allowed to be a part of that whole journey is epic. I got really lucky coming into the sport at a time where it was really fresh, really young. I've been able to push the sport outside of the world. I've been able to travel the world as a drift driver. And for me, it's just as much about the stuff behind the scenes as it is about the stuff on track. I love competing. I love the door-to-door action. I love trying to figure out how to be a little bit better than the other guy. But I also love meeting new people, making new relationships. And at the end of the day, the drift scene is not about cars, it is about people. Because drifting is judged and not timed, a lot of people don't necessarily get it at first, especially if you come from traditional racing where there's a stopwatch, right? But when you understand the way it works, and you understand that the judges are trying to do their best, they're trying to find the right winner, whether that is, you know, judging off of angle or judging off of speed or proximity or whatever it is, I don't think there is a judge out there that is swayed in any direction on purpose. But I do think it's hard to judge at times. I think you can be deceived by the engine noise or by the look of the car or the way you were positioned to watch that particular turn, or maybe the storyline of the event. Who is the comeback kid that wrecked in practice and came back? So I think there's a lot of little subtleties that are hard to put a number on. To me, that's what makes drifting so exciting. Trying to figure out that black art of how do you actually read the judges? What are they actually looking for? And it may not always be what they say they're looking for. Drifting is all about trusting the car. When you send the car in sideways going 200 kilometers an hour or more, you definitely need that car to hold the angle. If you wash off the track, you're hurt or maybe dead, you know? So if you don't trust the car, you're simply not going to do well. And trusting the car comes down to how it's built, it comes down to the crew that's preparing the car, it comes down to the parts, and it comes down to the maintenance. And running Rimax lubricants in this car, we've never had engines that have done better. We've never had transmissions that have done better. We've never had diffs that have lasted this long. The lubricants are awesome. Eric and Ole, my mechanics and wingmen, they have everything they need to keep everything in check. It just works. So there's been a lot of controversy in drifting about people trying to mess up for the guy behind on purpose, brake checking, trying to do some funny things on initiation. And I think for sure there are guys that do that on purpose. I think there's been a history where you can clearly see that maybe someone's done some of that. But I think all of that stuff, especially in Formula Drift, went away 10 years ago. I've been accused of brake checking when in reality I almost spun the car. So I was trying to hold on to the car, not spinning it. Other guys have been accused of brake checking when they're just trying to go deep in a corner and get a fast exit. I think the judges are so good now that they will figure out if you're trying to do something maliciously. And if you, as a driver, go down the route of trying to do something bad to try and mess up for the other guy, you're very much risking your own run. Because at that point, you're putting it in the hands of the judges. When it comes to competition, I'm very detailed, and I'm a pretty good drift analyst, I would say, in all modesty. I can look at a field of cars and start figuring out which car I think is best. In Formula Drift right now, there's very different cars competing together. I'm not sure if there's any such thing as a perfect drift car, because they all have different advantages and disadvantages. Last year I thought that Matt Field was really gonna shine this year with the Corvette, but they've been struggling this far. So even if something looks great on paper, it's not necessarily gonna do that well in real life. So sticking to what you have and trying to get the most out of what you have proves to be the best recipe a lot of times. You can buy a drift car from the dealer lot, a Corvette, right? And that is probably a better starting point than a Toyota Corolla. But if you can make that Corolla work and really showcase Toyota's parts to doing that, more power to you. And that's what we're trying to do. Trying to make that Corolla cooler than it already is. And we're trying to beat some Corvettes and Vipers and Mustangs, It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool when it works. And again, to quote Von Gittin Jr., the coolest car, you know which car is the coolest? The one on the top of the podium. I think the drivers that I enjoy driving with the most are guys that aren't in the big leagues, guys that are not in Formula Drift or D1 or even out here at Gauteville. They're guys that are in it for the love of just driving, and they don't have all of this sponsorship and everything riding on their success. So they're there with no pressure, nothing to lose, but a lot to gain by trying to beat an ex-world champion. And I have some really good friends here in Norway that I go ice drifting with in the winter, and they're really, really good drivers. They will push me around the track. They will catch me off guard. They will push me into snowbanks. They're the kind of guys that would do really well in competition, but they don't have the drive to do it on the big stage. They just want to kick my ass out there on the frozen lakes. I'm not always positive, and I have my moments where I turn off my phone, I won't talk to anyone, I'll go out, do something else. There was a time where I would, go paddle boarding or surfing or, stuff like that, and I try and do that as much as I can. It's just so darn busy right now. I don't have a lot of time to do other things. I'm all about growth, some kind of growth, growing as a person, learning, seeing something new. Whenever I get beat early on in a competition, I always watch the entire competition to see what I can learn. So I think that is the motivation, trying to become a better competitor and person and learning from people. And there's so much out there to be experienced and learned. So life's a journey.